to welcome us here to this fabulous building, to this fabulous venue, to this fabulous business. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to Ian Stewart, the Chief Executive of HSBC. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, good morning, folks, and thank you very much for coming. I know you say good morning, it's now afternoon, so it probably tells you a little bit about my morning so far. I know it's been probably quite difficult for you coming here today with so many other things on, and we definitely operate in the most unusual of times. And it's been fairly chaotic in HSBC for the last couple of weeks for all the reasons I don't need to explain. But I'm really trying to regroup here because this is also a really important session we've got here today. And so I was asked if I would say a few words. But first of all, let me just introduce you to our building here. It's, we're very proud of the building. It's a great building. It's a fantastic building to work in because it's very bright. So just as it's very light here, it's very light on every single floor. So if you ask people about their sort of work ethic in this building, it's very high. And if you get a chance to wander about later, don't steal any of the artwork. So just managed to get some new pieces in. But if you've got a keen eye for art, I will point out one piece for you, which is on the wall over there, there's one of the original Lowries that we bought many years ago as a bank. And you don't often get a chance to see a Lowry, so it's just there on the door, in the way in, and it's probably one of our best. We've got 3 Lowrys in the back, and there's 2 quite small ones, and there's 1 really good one. So just on the way out, just pause and have a look at a great artist's work. This is the UK headquarters of HSBC. It's a large bank, 15 million customers rely on us every day, and we're delighted. Any customers here today, we're delighted to have you here today. But it goes back, our history goes back here many years in Birmingham. And the reason I've got a note here is I might get some of the dates wrong, but 1836 was when it all kicked off here in Birmingham. And that was then called the Birmingham and Midlands Bank. And there's a certain Mr. Geach who was the CEO, and there's a picture of him in the main boardroom over to my right. Again, have a look if you want later. But why is the region important to us? It's a great region for innovation, and we're surrounded by fantastic universities and places of learning in the West Midlands. And actually, it's a huge benefit, and will be, I think, a massive benefit for us in the years ahead. When you employ something like 4,500 people in the area, you need talent, always needing fresh talent. And we are blessed with being able to attract a lot of talent. I'm doing a government meeting on levelling up in Sheffield on Wednesday morning. We've got 3,000 people in Sheffield, a lot of technology-based people there. And again, I'll be pushing the Sheffield universities. We don't have as good a relationship with the Sheffield universities as we do with the local universities here. And we need that flow of talent all the time. And interestingly, I was with the CEO of Legal in General on Friday, and he was saying exactly the same thing. It's talent. It's this war on talent, the skills that you need today that we must keep investing in if we're going to be successful as a country. Always remember, 6th largest trading nation in the world is the UK. We certainly don't want to lose that. So we officially opened our doors here in 2018, and we couldn't buy the land. There's a longer story there. Don't ask me about it. So we've got a 250-year lease on this piece of land. I probably won't see it out, but 250-year lease. And it was a £200 million build for the building. And I think it's been money really well spent, if I'm being honest with you. So if you ever want to use any of the facilities here, as long as we get plenty of notice, it's always what I ask people, don't inundate us, but if there's ever something you want to hold, or you're doing an investment, or you've got people coming from around the world if you want to use, just give us a bit of notice. We continue to receive great support from the regional inward investment vehicle, West Midlands Growth Company, and very important for us to work with the growth company because we get all the data and all the intel, and hopefully welcome new companies in. And that's one of the great things about HSBC is that we push a lot of business out. We help. When I say that, I mean we help businesses export out. And that's what you can do when you've got a footprint in a lot of countries. But we welcome a lot in. So when we've got businesses who want to set up in the UK, especially around this part of the world, bringing them in here and welcoming them is a really good start for us. But as I said to you, the partnerships that we build are absolutely crucial. So things like the universities, the professional establishment is really important in this city. And what we did recently with the University of Birmingham and PwC is we developed a new learning tool. It's in fact, Ian is sitting right at the front here, to give you all the information about it. I'd love to steal all the credit for it, I can't steal any for it. But it's a fantastic tool to help young people get very familiar with technology and different things that we need in business, done in bite-sized chunks, 2-hour bite-sized chunks. And that's the sort of things you can do when you work with really good partners. You can bring that sort of material together for the wider use of the community. And 90%, over 90% of the work we are doing is in STEM-related job roles, so science, technology, engineering, and maths. And that's what we need, and that's what this part of the world needs, because it's so technology-based. But to be able to help that journey is so, so important. So levelling up in the West Midlands, I think, is going to be key over the next 10, 20 years. And it's quite funny because in this building, we talk about 2030 as if it's tomorrow. Everything we're doing right now is about where's it going to be in 2030. And it will be tomorrow. When you're investing £650 million a year, which is what we invest in this business and technology, you've always got to be thinking next step, next step. So it's a huge investment. And part of that, or a big part of that, is our talent and then in technology to make sure we get the right technology. Why do we need that? Because you demand it. It's the customers that demand it. You know, if you don't have it on your phone now 24/7, it just doesn't work. So we've got to keep up, and keeping up is quite a challenge. So to everyone here today, thanks very much again for coming. I hope you really enjoyed the session. Thank you for making us part of it. We want to be part of it. We're very excited about the future, and long may that continue. So with that, I'm going to hand you back to Liam, and I'm sure we'll excite you with all the technology that's going to be talking about. Thank you very much.
Ian, thank you so much for that very warm welcome, and thank you very much for your support today. So I'm going to say a few words now just to kind of get the ball rolling, and then I'm delighted to be able to hand over to the patron of the West Midlands Forum, Councillor Ian Ward, leader of Birmingham City Council. We then have a fabulous panel who are going to just share with us a few observations, but to kickstart a discussion which we have here. So we'll try and get through the stage setting as fast as possible so that we can get on to discussions and questions. So the West Midlands Forum is a new initiative. It was created by people coming together last year because we felt that there was a gap. We needed a space where people from a wide range of sectors came together to just think, to just talk about the future. And so we wanted to kick off today with a book, an introduction to how people see the next 10 years. And obviously, with the loss of our great co-chair, Jack Dromey, we thought it especially appropriate that we dedicate our book to Jack. And so Jack has the last word in this book. It is the essay that he was working on the day that he tragically died. Over the course of this year, we have already been given a few ideas for events and reports that people want. So there's clearly an appetite to do something on green manufacturing. There's clearly an appetite to do something on the creative economy, on affordable housing, on black enterprise. But stay in touch with us. Something on smart cities. Stay in touch with us because you will have ideas where you think it's important to get some analysis, some ideas together, and then crucially to get people in a room together to just build some relationships, that chew things over, because that's how great things start. So I wish Jack was here today to see this book. In his essay, he says this. He says, "I'm passionate in my belief that change is possible." And he goes on to then talk about the importance of big ambitions for tackling climate change. But he wrote, "It's crucial that in our ambitions for tackling climate change, we are radical about creating opportunities for all." That was Jack all the way through. So the book that we have pulled together, 27 leaders from across the region, they weren't given much of a brief from me. They were just asked to reflect on what kind of golden decade they wanted to look forward to, what were their hopes and dreams, but also what were the challenges that they foresaw. And what has been really striking as the editor putting it together is that there's a real consensus around 4 basic ideas. So one is the mindset. Running like words through a stick of rock here is an ambition and a sense that we need to be great collaborators and a sense that we actually need to make change our friend. We actually have quite a high comfort level with change in this region. We're quite used to the sort of fluidity of the 21st century. That's a real strength for us in a place that has got to be dynamic and innovative for the future. When Matthew Bolton welcomed people to Soho House, to Soho Manufactory, he used to say, "I sell here, sir, what all the world desires, and that is power." He was not a man to pull his punches. He was somebody who was ambitious for business, ambitious for the region. And actually, it's that mindset of thinking globally, thinking ambitious, that you see running as a theme throughout the book. The second big theme is it's a determination to lead the green, creative, digital economy. So as a region that was, of course, the home of the first industrial revolution, it's really fantastic to see people's ambition and ideas for how we now lead the industrial revolution of this century. And again, some brilliant contributions around that theme. The third idea, and again, we didn't give people this steer, this is just what came in. The third big idea is about making sure that we're a region that leaves nobody behind. So really strong contributions about tackling homelessness, for example. We are happy and pleased to see cranes in the sky, but we will never be content while there are still homeless in the doorways. Making sure that we're a region where there isn't homelessness, where there isn't hunger, where there is opportunity for all, is something that people in the region feel very strongly about. It's actually an echo of the ethos, actually, well represented by George Cadbury, whose business was, of course, first in the road behind us. Cadbury was not just a great business person, he was a brilliant business person, but he was also an ethical capitalist. He was also an extraordinary civic entrepreneur, and that theme is written strong throughout this book. And then the final piece that I wanted to flag, the final theme that I wanted to flag again, pleased and surprised me, is that people want to see this as a region of phenomenal places. So people really thought imaginatively about the places that we live in. And crucially, how do we bring culture to become far more pervasive throughout the places that we live in? How do we make sure that the streets are people-friendly streets? Adam Tranter's got a brilliant essay on that theme. So again, the ideals here are appropriate for a region that gave birth to great exercises in civic imagination like Bourneville or the Morpole Estate, or a city that was indeed the capital of the arts and crafts movement in the 19th century. So what you see in this book is a real sense that there are great traditions that we can be proud of, but there is an appetite to reinvent them for the future. And the final piece, I would say, that again is something that the editor you notice as a theme, is a determination to be the authors of our own destiny. A real sense that we cannot leave change to others. We cannot simply expect handouts to oil the wheels of what needs to get done. We actually need to be authors of our own destiny, and because no one of us in this room has got the wherewithal to make the change we need happen on their own, that means we need each other. So I hope that the forum will be useful in helping provide that space where people come together, because in the final words that Jack put in his essay was a powerful reminder that the change that we need is big and the time that we have is short. Those were prophetic words, but actually as the final word in the book, I thought it rather appropriate. So, without further ado, it is now my privilege to welcome Catherine Ward, the leader of Birmingham City Council, to kick us off. And then, if it's okay, we're going to go to Mark, to Beverly, to Henrietta, Brearley, who hopefully is about to arrive. Yes, come on, Henrietta. Henrietta has hopefully just recovered from an extraordinary Friday night with an absolutely magnificent Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce Awards dinner. Well done, Henrietta. And then we're going to have Anno, and then I'm going to ask our speakers, okay guys, to just kind of give us kind of 4 or 5 minutes, top line points, and then we'll maximise our time for discussion. But Ian, if I could hand the floor to you, I'd be very grateful. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Liam. And while you were speaking and making that introduction, I was reminded very strongly about the George Dawson civic gospel. That came across very strongly to me. For those of you who don't know, George Dawson was a preacher in this city in the late 19th century. And it was his civic gospel that led to the transformation of this city, turning it into the workshop of the world, one of the foremost cities in the world, and led to that famous quote about Birmingham being the best run city in the world, something that I'm sure we'd all like to get back to. But good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to discuss what I am confident will be a golden decade of opportunity for people and communities of Birmingham and the wider region. Golden decade is a phrase I've been using for a while now, and I believe with absolute justification, because we're undergoing a once-in-a-generation transformation that has the potential to shape the lives of people living and working here for generations to come. My job, and in fact our collective job, is to turn that potential into genuine change that is felt in every neighbourhood and every community across the city and the region. Now, I've been asked this afternoon to set the context for our discussion by outlining how I would like to describe this city region to others in 10 years' time. And I think to do that, it's important to set some of our current challenges out. Today, in Birmingham, the rate of unemployment is double the national average. There is a decade's gap in life expectancy between the poorest areas and the most affluent areas in the city. And perhaps most shocking of all, over 40% of Birmingham's children grow up in relative poverty. We simply cannot and will not accept that nearly half of our children grow up in relative poverty in a modern 21st century city in a first world nation. So our collective task is to challenge these and other long-standing inequalities that continue to blight the lives of too many of our fellow citizens. So, it's not how I describe Birmingham in 10 years' time that really matters. It's how the people who currently feel left behind describe the city in the years to come. And I want them to tell a tale of better jobs, better and greener housing, cleaner air, active travel, with more reliable, cleaner and safer public transport. And I want them to talk about a healthier and more equal city, where optimism has been turned into a better reality for people in every neighbourhood across the city. Of course, every town and city would want to say the same, but I believe Birmingham is well placed to deliver. Prior to COVID, this city was seeing growth at almost twice the rate of London and 4 times the national average. And while the pandemic has had a profound impact both economically and socially, the factors that made Birmingham such an attractive place to live, work and invest in early 2020 remain in place and will now help power our recovery. In fact, even at a time of such upheaval, we've continued to make progress on a significant number of major projects, which will stimulate growth across the city, and there remains a lengthy list of projects that will supercharge our recovery, bring many millions of pounds of investment into the city and the wider region. So if you take Peddington, the exciting regeneration of Perry Bar, Langley, the Smethwick to West Bromwich corridor, Longbridge, and our inclusive growth plans for East Birmingham, these projects are already delivering opportunities, homes and jobs in local neighbourhoods around the city. The £1.9 billion Smithfield development has the potential to create over 8,000 new jobs. The £700 million Paradise development, which you can see taking shape behind you, has reimagined and revitalised what was a tired city centre area, creating new commercial buildings, world-class public realm and improved pedestrian connections. In Digbeth, the creative jewel of the city, plans are in place for a 42-acre development centred around the iconic custard factory that will support the creation of over 16,000 jobs and provide over 1,800 new homes alongside shops, restaurants, cafes, and additional leisure facilities. Through the fast approaching Commonwealth Games, HS2, the Midland Metro extension, the BBC relocation, and Stephen Knight's proposed film studios into the mix, and it's easy to see why this is Birmingham's time. The city is undergoing a major transformation, and our job is to ensure that the rewards of regeneration, the jobs, homes, and the opportunities benefit people in every ward and every community. Yes, regeneration matters, but success for Birmingham must mean success for the people of Birmingham. This will be measured by how we improve and transform lives. So, we must create jobs, opportunities and pathways through to prosperity for every neighbourhood right across Birmingham. We must bridge the skills gap. We must tackle health inequalities, and our citizens must be given a stake in everything we achieve as a city if we are going to address the persistent challenges that for far too long have held people back in our neighbourhoods and communities. If we succeed, and I'm confident that we will, then future generations will look back and say that this truly was our city's golden decade, a springboard to a better and fairer Birmingham. Thank you.
Let's get some reflections. So, Mark, you've been in the region for many years. You've had a unique position now at Reach PLC for seeing all kinds of things. But share with us some thoughts about the future.
Yeah, I have had a ringside seat for a long time, and I was reflecting on that in the challenge of looking forward. I think demands that you also look back to say what are the lessons that we can learn from in order to make this a golden decade. And I took the liberty of looking back just a little bit more than 10 years, in fact. Remember back in 2008, Tata came in and took over Jaguar and Land Rover, as they were then. Really the last chance for the auto industry of the West Midlands, saving the very last car makers that we had in this region of any appreciable scale. But how quickly that optimism was undercut by the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the economic challenges that sort of washed over the whole world, but left JLR within just a few months of being taken over in an exceptionally powerless state. And I do have to reflect on, with apologies, Liam, that at that point it was evident that central government, Whitehall, of whatever colour, didn't really get what a region like the West Midlands was about. I'm not sure it understood, and I think if you don't understand, you can't claim to care. And I think that's something that we have to learn from as a region. As it happened, after, in fact, trade unions and businesses came together with civic society to really push for JLR to be given the support it needed. After that, it was JLR that made its own future. So, and that future was forged more in the council chambers and the boardrooms of the West Midlands and the universities of the West Midlands, and Mumbai actually, but it was fundamentally in Whitehall. And now we have a springboard for the kind of future that's already been touched on, where JLR is the sort of the central catalyst for so much that we're seeing in terms of the excellent work around WMG, you know, the gravitational pull that's bringing battery and EV technology and innovation into the region. But that's a consequence more of us doing it for ourselves, which is exactly what you just said, than it is looking to others to help us make that happen. And I think the other thing I would reflect upon, and maybe a challenge as well, is that as well as making it, making our own future, I think there's a lesson around scale in that, however hesitantly the then Conservative Lib Dem government brought in the concept of elected mayors, actually one thing they did get right was to pitch it on the metro scale rather than the Birmingham scale, which is where we started that journey. And I would just put a provocation here that we need to look even further, in that scale has given us, through the combined authority and the mayoralty, a way of asserting the value of the West Midlands on a UK, but also a global scale. But I think we need to go further. I'm not convinced that actually we sit as cohesively or coherently as we should within the wider Midlands, because once you put that together, you have an economic, civic and social entity that is actually the most significant across the UK, including the nations. And I think we ignore that opportunity at our peril. If we think the region stops at the M1, then I think we're going to inhibit the growth that could truly make this a golden decade.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. Beverly, over to you. Beverly, you're an executive director, associate professor at BCU. You've written a brilliant essay here about energy and the potential for the region to really lead on green energy and green manufacturing. But let me not second guess what you'd like to say.
Thank you very much indeed, and congratulations, Liam, on such a wonderful collection of essays. I think it's a real message of hope for us all. And as Martin Sutherland says, the power to move is in our blood, and I think that hope is about moving our aspirations forward very positively, very constructively. And so I really take a lot from that, but also, as Councillor Ward says in his chapter, it's about more than shining new buildings if we're going to tackle the very serious challenges around levelling up and inequality that you highlight. So I think the message of hope is at the core of the book, and I think it's a very just and fitting tribute to our friend Jack. So congratulations on that. But I wanted to really emphasise 3 themes beyond hope, and that was honesty and integrity, home production and resilience, and self-help. So I think it builds, Mark, on what you've been talking about. And the honesty and integrity bit, for me, very much came out of actually the Lehman Brothers collapse and the global financial crash, and the idea that something that I think people like Will Hutton have been talking about for a long time, the need to reset capitalism to take far more into account our consumers, our society, our communities, our locality, and indeed I think in thinking about the sort of chapter that I wrote about energy and about the climate change challenges, about how we look at not just consumption of resources and goods, but production and disposal. So to have a real circular economy view, because I think in thinking about the switch to EVs, which is going on in this region, is very challenging. We need to be asking questions like, where are the supply chains for our EVs? You know, is our lithium sourced with the consent of the indigenous peoples in South America? Is the cobalt mined with child labour? And how are we going to recycle the batteries at the end of it? So I think there's some really important questions around honesty and integrity in the way that we approach big challenges like climate change, and that we're not simply offshoring our emissions to the people who are producing the goods that we consume. And that brings me on to home production, because for me, home production is very much about the circular economy, about how we are going to really use our assets, our resources, the talent that Ian spoke about, the fight for the talent that we're growing here in our region. And I sort of was very interested, Liam, in Adam Tranter's chapter on in particular cycling and active mobility. And it was interesting thinking about recent procurement of our West Midlands bike scheme, because initially we looked to procure from Germany through Nextbike, and that didn't work, and then we procured from Ashley Cycles in Stratford, local company. And as they point out, every single part of their supply chain is sourced in the West Midlands, with the locks made in Nuneaton, with parts of it designed in Coventry. It's a fantastic effort, and I think that's where you'll get the levelling up, you know, in the public pound being spent locally, creating local quality jobs. And I think we need much more focus on that element of it. And finally, self-help. For me, that is about, you know, the public and private pound being spent in our region more, really delivering quality jobs for people. But also, I think we need a bit more expertise in levering in the funds that have become available through ESG, environmental, societal governance, and in particular post COP26 under the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. I mean, supposedly $130 trillion of funding is available. We need to lever in some of that into our region. We need the financial expertise to be able to do so, and then I think we can start to deliver some of the projects that maybe aren't commercially viable on their own, maybe like geothermal, for example, in Worcestershire, thinking about the wider Midlands mark. So I feel there are a lot of opportunities, but I think most of all this is, if I could just refer to a French author, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who wrote in 1948, and I won't quote it in French, but I can if you want me to, that actually, when it comes to the future, it's not about predicting it, it's about making it possible. And it's about taking it into our own hands, and that's what I think we need to do here. And if I can just return in closing to Ian, your Chief Executive, who gave us such a wonderful welcome. I saw on Saturday the Duke, the film The Duke, and I don't know if anybody's seen it, but thinking of your Larry, it's a very good lesson in how to very unobtrusively take an artwork. So I hope that nobody is tempted here today. Anyway, thank you so much.
Redouble the stitch on that. Henrietta, you're the Chief Executive of the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. You had a hell of a night on Friday, a magnificent award. So well done for putting that together. You're seeing all kinds of interesting things.
We are indeed, and obviously I just want to start by backing Beverly's point on circular economy. I mean, when you think about how much electronic waste has just been dumped in landfill over the years, the amount of precious metals sitting there just because we haven't thought this through, it makes you weak, so we've got to find a better way to do this, particularly with the cost of certain materials now. So normally I'm really big on sort of vision and excitement for the future, but I'm going to be honest, I found it really challenging at the moment to think 10 years ahead, just because of how much is happening right here and now, and how much just feels urgent pressure day to day. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought that just makes it all the more important that we are keeping that sight on the horizon, and we do know what we're working towards. With all the change and disruption happening now, we know what that end goal still looks like. So this is where I got to, after many cups of tea and much thinking, because the Chamber, of course, we've been in business since 1813, so we've seen 1 or 2 decades over that time. And can you just stick your hand up for me if you're already very familiar with Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, who we are, and you can see one of our board members who certainly should be. So about half. So for those who aren't, in a nutshell, we love local and we go global. We're all about supporting local businesses, find customers and build their networks locally, create a profile locally, but also trade internationally. We employ around 80 members of staff helping businesses with those journeys. So I thought about this in that sort of paradigm, the local and the global. So on the local side, I'm hoping that we see a lot of change around 3 Ps, conveniently, physical place, our infrastructure and world around us, procurement, picking up Beverly's points, that sort of revolution of local procurement, and people, genuine moves to an inclusive economy. And on the global side, seeing the region recognised globally as leaders in the low carbon economy, wouldn't it be great to see Made in the West Midlands be that real badge of honour and quality in this industry all around the world, and that business support ecosystem that generally understands and reflects businesses' needs in this space. So I'll touch on just a few points under each of those. Ian's already covered very well some of the big changes coming to Birmingham. There's exciting investment projects coming our way. And if you haven't read our Future City plan from Birmingham City Council, I can recommend it because there's a lot of exciting stuff. But one bit that really captures the opportunity for me is actually just outside of Birmingham, a little muddy field on the edge of Solihull, which will shortly be home to Interchange Station for HS2. And HS2 really is that project that we have to make the most of because it has been going on for so long. It's easy to forget how much it's going to bring to the region, how much opportunity it opens, being at the heart of that network. And Interchange, as I said, muddy field, by motorway, even the archaeology showed there's never been anything there. By the time we flash forwards to 2032, we should be seeing a whole new community rise out of the ground there. You've got the NEC Group's master plan that's out for consultation at the moment, looking at building a sustainable community, up to 11,000 people, 5,000 homes and 14,000 square foot of commercial and event space by the time they complete, with the first phase due to be completed in 2036. And then you've got your urban growth companies, UK Central, a real flagship opportunity for the region, which can see up to 6,000 homes, 6 million square feet of commercial development, and real opportunities to look differently at how we build this brand new community based around sustainability principles, based around access to public transport. I mean, it's going to be not just on the HS2 network, but on the existing West Coast main line as well. A huge amount of opportunity there. It's that big physical shift in the landscape. And I think I probably speak for everyone here that the Birmingham we remember 10 years ago, I certainly came here to university in 2009, and that city centre, that view out the window, couldn't be more radically different to what we saw then, and I'm sure that over the next 10 years we will see that coming too. But on to procurement. So local procurement, huge opportunity, good for the planet, sourcing locally, and good for people too, reinvesting in local businesses that create jobs and growth. And there's positive moves already from Birmingham City Council on the Charter for Social Responsibility, looking at doing more engaging local businesses. And over the next 10 years, I'd like to see that breadth and depth increase. So depth of engagement with SMEs, depth of opportunity with public procurements to facilitate innovation, and also breadth of institutions that are taking that approach. And the games I actually see as an opportunity to really learn in this space. Games have to undertake a huge amount of procurement in a very short space of time with local procurement front of mind. There must be so much learning about what worked, what didn't, how we can all do this differently moving forwards that I hope to see as part of that long-term legacy being communicated around the region. People, I mean, we've been talking about the need for a more inclusive economy for a very long time. It's the 10 years I've been working with the Chamber, it's been constant source of conversation. I'm sure there's many in the room who've been talking about it for many more decades. And yet, still today, as Ian said, 40% of Birmingham's children live in relative poverty. According to the Midlands Engine, only 7.5% of businesses in the West Midlands, majority owned by women. And there's new research from the Business Bank just the last couple of weeks that show ethnic minority-led businesses are still receiving far higher rejection rates when applying for finance than white-owned business. So there's some progress in some areas, but still some perennial issues that remain. And what always strikes me is that when we look at the solutions and people put forward, what can we do about this? It's always the same stuff. It's always that piece of role modelling, tackling our biases, meaningfully monitoring and then centralising inclusion when it comes to setting KPIs and performance goals within public or private organisations, investing in public transport to physically connect people to opportunities. It's the same stuff over and over, which is good because we're reinforcing the same messages and hopefully those are starting to cut through. But what I'd like to see in 10 years is we've done it. We're not talking about it, we've done it. And then on the global, like I say, just that made in the West Midlands being a real badge of honour when it comes to low carbon economy and low carbon businesses. And on support, we're currently undertaking some research at the Chamber, because one thing we spot through our international trade support is there's a lot of good stuff and there's also a lot of gaps. So what we want to do is make sure as we probably enter what, if we're honest, is going to be a period of constrained public funding, and what increasingly looks like the kind of thing we get every 10 years, regardless of what government's in charge, where a lot of business support is all of a sudden pulled and binned and we start all over again. It looks like we're heading towards that sort of period. So we're spotting this and we're going, what can we do? What can we do on a local level ourselves as a chamber? What can we do with combined authority as part of the levelling up agenda? What can we do with the private sector, right, such as HSBC already do a huge amount in this space with their clients when it comes to international trades to really build that local solution. Because when it comes to the positive impacts of international trade, there's research from the ONS that businesses that trade internationally are 70% more productive than those that aren't. So there's a real opportunity for that levelling up, for that local growth to support businesses and going global. There's a lot more I could say, but I'm going to stop there because I've probably gone well over my time.
That's absolutely brilliant. Good essays in the book, actually, from Carl Richardson, who's kindly sponsored the printing on that global mindset, and Paul Tandy's essay on just the opportunity around the NEC master plan is really worth a close read. Right, Amo, let me ask you to round up the speakers. You're a great entrepreneur, a great creative, and what I love about you most is that sometimes you're a brilliant heretic
and just you force us to challenge some received wisdom. Anyway, I'm not going to say guess what you're going to say either.
So I suppose it's a remix of what colleagues have already said, talking about globalisation, globalism, and what shapes that. For me, there's two things that have been shared. One of the talk about diversity and technology, and it forms the fabric of modern day society. Whilst there is so much connectivity in the world that we live in, there's also growing polarisation. So what you have is not just in the physical space, but also in the digital space. And so how do we as a city navigate all these kind of bipolar conversations that we're having? It's something that I've been talking to myself in the mornings, like what am I going to do in the next 10 years to really make a change? Because I'll always have a half-decent job, I'm not going to be rich, I'm not going to be poor, and where am I going to put my energy and my time? So, the Brummie mantra, young, digital and diverse, perhaps the first plural city in the UK, and that is a fight between London and Leicester. But the evidence is clear. 65% of our school children, as primary and secondary, are non-white British. So how do we, as a city, really capitalise on that? That's the private sector and the public sector, old and new. So it's not just about, and how do we ultimately, somebody mentioned it earlier, how do we tell these compelling stories? How do we own these stories? Because we all know that coming of different minority groups is a driver for innovation. So if you look at the food that we eat, it's always in remix, isn't it? Especially in Birmingham. I don't know if you guys know that the chicken tikka song doesn't actually exist. So some of you probably do, but a lot of you probably don't. It's something that we obviously remixed for the UK trade. So I think that's really good. Just little things like that. The best genres of music, UK music now, it's about the amalgamation and the remix. So UK garage, drill, grime, it's all about the remix. And if you look at innovation in different cities, and I don't want to mention Dubai, Singapore, actually it's ultimately about, they have one thing in common, that's immigrant communities coming in with skills, changing what's already happened. So how do we make sure that we follow and understand the data, because it's really obvious that economic performance is interconnected to diversity and innovation and skills. So, we need to look at what does that actually mean. Should we start looking at diversity as an input into a company rather than an output? So if you look at traditional CSR, most people go, let's do that because it's that socially conscious, post-Me Too, post-Black Lives Matter, but actually we need to start thinking slightly different and saying, what does it look like? So, the evidence, again, it's clear, it's meant for different thinking, not just from a governance perspective, but from a decision-making perspective, and also from a team perspective. So I think all these things are really important. But what I really wanted to hone in on is the millennial story, which is really, really interesting. By 2025, I think 70% of the global workforce will be made up of millennials. So what does that mean when it comes to diversity? So those who are probably our age, I can say that, they may look at diversity from a very particular lens, often race and gender, and in some companies just gender. But actually, millennials now, they're taking a far more intersectional perspective, socioeconomic, trans issues, all the things that perhaps we don't look at. And these guys, they're the guys that are going to be really changing and ultimately holding the management positions. So how do we absorb that and really influence that and look at that? There's loads to learn from people who work in this field of diversity, and I just think that if you're going to really grasp this thing, that sometimes it's really awkward to talk about. So my thing is, a good example is just take a picture of your board once a year, or your senior management team once a year, and just have that at your AGM. It's a really simple thing that you can do and say, well, let's look at change. What does that change look like? But it cannot be a one-off campaign. Sometimes it's quite long, it's quite complex. But if it's nurtured and it costs as well. This is the thing, a lot of people want to do diversity and cheap. It costs. So if you can nurture this thinking, just think about what the future managers are going to really be twisting up into this sort of super diversity.